So when was a horror film going to receive a Best Picture nomination at the Academy Awards? It wasn't going to happen for a long time. Frederick March might have won Best Actor for 1931's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but the movie was ignored in all other categories, which I discussed in the first entry of my series, Horror and the Oscars. The Bride of Frankenstein, one of my favorite films ever, only got a lone sound nomination. Throughout the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, there are only a handful of nominations for scary movies, nothing major, aside from maybe 1956's The Bad Seed, which got 3 acting nods. You get to the 1960s and you see the Academy starting to warm up to the genre a little bit when the quality is there. Psycho got into Best Supporting Actress for Janet Leigh and Best Director for Alfred Hitchcock, but it didn't win anything, and let's face it, this all-timer classic should have gotten into Best Picture, along with Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, and Best Actor for Anthony Perkins. For more on all things Psycho in the Oscars, check out the second video in my new series. So 2 years after Psycho, you get Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is kind of a horror film, one that got 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Actress for Bette Davis, and a win for Best Costume Design, Black and White. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds was nominated for Best Special Effects. Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte got a whopping 7 Oscar nods, but mostly in tech categories. Audrey Hepburn received a Best Actress nomination for 1967's very scary and effective Wait Until Dark, and Ruth Gordon won Best Supporting Actress for 1968's Rosemary's Baby. That unsettling film is such a classic you might assume it got a Best Picture nod, or at least got close to one, but no. Besides Gordon, its only other Oscar nomination was Best Adapted Screenplay. The first 3 years of the 1970s, the only horror film nominations are Best Original Score for Robert Altman's Images and Best Original Song for The Boy and His Rat sequel, Ben. That's it. That's all. Now, to be fair, the horror genre wasn't very strong at the beginning of the 70s, but still, what was going to come along to not only give a much-needed jolt to the genre, but also be so brilliant, so groundbreaking, so chilling, so popular, that the Academy was going to have to cave in and award it a bunch of nominations, including, finally, Best Picture. The Exorcist, of course, a true phenomenon of a movie at the time, a year and a half before Jaws created the summer movie blockbuster.
Of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Damien!
The Exorcist did massive box office, got good reviews, and took the 1974 award season by storm. What all was it nominated for? Did it win anything? And did it have a chance to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards? Hi, it's Brian. This is the awards contender, and my friend Andrew Campbell is with me again today to chat everything Exorcist. Sit back, relax, and let's dig in. The novel The Exorcist, written by William Peter Blatty and based on a 1949 case of demonic possession Blatty had heard about, worked its way onto the New York Times bestseller list after its 1971 publication, and soon thereafter came the announcement that a movie was in the works. Blatty wrote the screenplay himself, and although Warner Brothers hired Mark Rydell to direct, Blatty insisted on William Friedkin, who's the French connection he admired. After that film became a hit and won Best Picture and Best Director at the 44th Academy Awards, Warner Brothers allowed Friedkin to come on board The Exorcist. The studio wanted big names for the cast, but both Friedkin and Blatty went to bat for a lesser-known ensemble, which included Linda Blair as Reagan, Jason Miller as Father Karras, and Ellen Burstyn as Chris. Production began in August 1972 and went more than 100 days over schedule and $2.5 million over budget. Cast and crew, including Reagan and Burstyn, sustained lifelong injuries, and Friedkin believed there was supernatural interference to his production to the point where he had a priest perform an exorcism on the set. The editing process also went long, to the point that Warner Brothers delayed the release date from earlier in 1973 all the way to the day after Christmas. The studio had low expectations for The Exorcist, given that it was a horror film without any major stars, but the film instantly started setting box office records, eventually earning $66 million nationwide, which inflates to about $300 million today. Although the horror genre had been a little dormant for a few years, The Exorcist changed everything, as I discussed with Andrew. And I was just taken again with the power of this movie. It's like, how is this 50 years old? It's like, it is scarier and more powerful than most horror films that come out now. And
Yeah.
I mean, the horror genre was not really in a good place in 73. Until The Exorcist, you really don't have a breakthrough. This was the breakthrough the genre needed. For months, lines of people wrapped around theaters, many audience members fainting and vomiting in the aisles during the film's most shocking moments. Word of mouth was so strong, pretty much everyone felt compelled to see this controversial movie, which remains incredibly shocking to this day, as Andrew and I talked about.
I don't see many movies, terrifying horror movies of kids doing these things and saying these things. If it did happen today, there would be some crazy Hollywood investigations into this. Like this kid should not have said this. This is bad, and it's crazy. It's almost like it's crazy they got away with this.
People were fainting in the aisles when this came out in 73, and a lot of what I read was that it wasn't necessarily the stuff at the very end. It was like when she's getting pricked in the neck and blood is spurting out, and people were just like, they couldn't take it. I would love to, kind of like with Psycho, I would love to have seen this movie with a giant audience, like in its opening weekend, with most of the people in the room not knowing what they're about to get. It must have been through the roof, the reaction of this movie when it came out. It was unlike anything people had seen. The nation's most prominent film critics gave The Exorcist a mixed reaction, some people like Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times giving the movie their highest rating, while other people like Vincent Canby of the New York Times calling it an impossible film to sit through. Oh, Vincent. With enough negativity from some of the nation's most prominent critics, it wasn't a certainty The Exorcist was going to play a major role during the 1974 award season, but the film was such a sensation with audiences that really, let's be honest, there was no way this one was going to be ignored. For many viewers, like Andrew and myself, this is a near-perfect feat of filmmaking with astonishing writing and directing and monumental performances all the way through.
The performances, I think, are just amazing. Like, every character is so deep and there's so much behind them. You root for them. You are interested in them. I mean, like in horror movies, there's so many throwaway characters and not much backstory. In this one, it was not like that at all. Like with the mother being, she's having issues with her husband or ex-husband. Like he's gone, also trying to figure out how to help her daughter, but also trying to work and manage the stuff going on in the household. Yeah, very well thought out characters that are not shallow in any way.
Award season in early 1974 must have brought a few smiles to horror fans around the world. The Exorcist received 7 Golden Globe nominations, winning Best Supporting Actress for Linda Blair, Best Screenplay for William Peter Blatty, Best Director for William Friedkin, and Best Motion Picture Drama. A damn good start, I'd say. So good you might have thought this movie was the frontrunner going into the 46th Academy Awards, especially once the Oscar nominations were announced, which couldn't have gone better. If the Academy had warmed up to a couple of horror films in the last 15 years like Psycho and Rosemary's Baby, they finally embraced a genre movie with almost every nomination they could. The Exorcist was recognized in a whopping 10 categories: Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Supporting Actress for Blair, Best Supporting Actor for Jason Miller, Best Actress for Ellen Burstyn, Best Director, and yes, Best Picture. For the first time ever in the 46-year history of the Academy Awards, they nominated a horror film for Best Picture. About frickin' time. Now the question was, going into Oscars night on April 2nd, 1974 in the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, was The Exorcist going to win big? I mean, it did do extremely well at the Golden Globes. Could it repeat wins at the Academy Awards in categories like Director and Picture? Other well-reviewed 1973 movies like American Graffiti, Cries and Whispers, and A Touch of Class didn't appear to be too competitive. There really was just one movie that could steal The Exorcist thunder: The Sting, directed by George Roy Hill, which was mostly passed over at the Golden Globes, but won at DGA, was more of an Academy-friendly drama overall, and like The Exorcist, also received 10 Oscar nominations. In retrospect, it could have gone either way. The Academy could have embraced The Exorcist the way they would embrace The Silence of the Lambs 18 years later, giving it tons of wins left and right, including supporting actress for Blair, actress for Burstyn, director for Friedkin, and picture. Those victories would have aged extremely well, but no, in the end, they sided with The Sting, giving the beloved period crime drama starring Paul Newman and Robert Redford 7 Oscar wins, including Best Original Screenplay, Best Director for George Roy Hill, and Best Picture. The Exorcist only won 2 prizes that night. First, Best Sound.
Thanks to Billy for getting us through the movie, to my crew, Pat Srirachi and David Moshlak, and to all the people here and in New York who made this possible.
And second, Best Adapted Screenplay for Blatty.
I would like to thank Mr. William Bloom, who taught me the rudiments and the craft of screenwriting, and Billy Friedkin, and my late parents, who came to this country on a cattle boat, and whose love and whose courage have brought me to this moment.
The film was clearly in second place behind The Sting, a close second to be sure, but genre bias from the Academy, in my opinion, is what prevented The Exorcist from going the distance. Blatty agreed, the man so frustrated with the lack of wins for The Exorcist that he released an angry statement the day after the Oscars that went on the front page of The Hollywood Reporter. He felt his movie was, quote, head and shoulders the finest film made this year and in many other years, unquote. And he also took offense at legendary director George Cukor, who reportedly led a campaign against the film because he didn't feel a horror movie was up to Best Picture standards. It disappoints me too that The Exorcist didn't win more, but at the end of the day, at least we have these amazing nominations, all deserved. Best Supporting Actor for Jason Miller is a great one, Miller not even recognized at the Golden Globes. Andrew agreed with me that it's a fantastic performance.
Jason Miller, I think his performance is definitely Oscar worthy. He wasn't your average priest, and that was just really, really, I'm sure, really hard to pull off without it coming off a little like awkward. Because they feel like he looks like a boxer, and like he does look like a boxer. That could have gone all kinds of ways, but I think he really found the sweet spot of being a very believable, rough priest.
I also love that nomination for Linda Blair as Regan in Best Supporting Actress. It's one of the most impressive child performances in the history of cinema. I do think of the 3 actors nominated for The Exorcist, she had the best chance in winning, given her Golden Globes victory, but as I talked about in a recent video, where I do a deep dive into the 1974 Best Supporting Actress race, another child in the category, Tatum O'Neal, was stiff competition for her amazing performance in Paper Moon, not a supporting performance at all, she's in the entire movie, but voters couldn't resist. Also, as I talked about with Andrew, Blair's Oscar nomination was met with resistance by many when some news came to light about her performance. There was some controversy at the time, even over Linda Blair getting an Oscar nomination, because basically once she's possessed, that's not her voice that we hear. That's a different actress.
So?
And it's like, and there's actual audio takes of Linda Blair saying the heinous things, and it is noticeably different than the voice we get in the movie. But does that take away from her physical performance? That I don't agree with. I think she's deserving of that nomination. Ellen Burstyn would have made a great win too, Andrew making this observation about her turn in the film.
Her dramatics were the perfect expression, the perfect way of screaming. Like, it all didn't feel phony. It felt like you're actually watching a woman lose her child to a demon.
But as I discussed in another recent video I made all about the 1974 Best Actress race, Glenda Jackson was a highly respected actor with a critically acclaimed performance in the Best Picture nominated comedy A Touch of Class, so she beat out Burstyn in the end. Although part of me thinks The Sting was always going to win Best Picture at the Oscars, Best Director might have been a little more up in the air if it hadn't been for one thing, as I discussed with Andrew. I think the big reason that Friedkin did not win the Oscar for The Exorcist is he just won the Oscar 2 years before for The French Connection with Gene Hackman. Okay. Not to say that, I mean, there have been a couple directors who won like back-to-back or won, 2 in a few years. I think if he had not won for The French Connection, he might have had a shot here because the movie was so popular, got into so many categories, they might have wanted to give it to him, like for this and The French Connection. Ultimately, the strong Academy Award showing for The Exorcist, at least at the nomination level, was proof that horror could make it into the ceremony if the audience showed up in droves and enough critics considered it to be a great film. 50 years on, The Exorcist remains one of the finest horror films ever made, a major influence on the genre that continues to be a powerful, remarkable work of art. As I've argued time and time again on this channel, and as I talked about with Andrew, there should be a place for horror at the Oscars, and that goes for movies released in recent years as well. But we get maybe twice a decade, like we get one that kind of gets in there. Like, it's pretty rare. And here I am on the sidelines being like, come on, you know, Elizabeth Moss, Best Actress, The Invisible Man. No?
Oh
no?
my God, that was so good. She was...
It
so
pisses
great.
me off when there's
it does.
Lupita Nyong'o, Us, these great performances that are just tossed aside because it's a genre film.
Yeah.
We're not going to take them seriously. It's like, no. Come on. It's not the Oscars of just one genre. It's of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
A year and a half after The Exorcist opened in theaters, 1975's Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg, kind of a horror film at its center, became a massive blockbuster and got into 4 categories at the 48th Academy Awards, including Best Picture. But the movie I want to talk about next in my Horror and the Oscar series is one of my favorite scary movies ever, based on one of my favorite Stephen King novels of all time. This film, like The Exorcist, still packs a massive punch all these decades later, and 2 of the coolest Oscar nominations of the 1970s, I would argue, happened at the 1977 ceremony, Best Supporting Actress for Piper Laurie, and Best Actress for Sissy Spacek. My video about Brian De Palma's haunting masterpiece Carrie is around the corner. Thanks so much for watching! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Oscar nomination The Exorcist received? Do you think it should have won lots more at the 46th Academy Awards? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.